the microphone on? All right, we're good now. The sad truth is, it probably is my fault if you find a bug in Node. There's quite a few folks that kind of help make sure that I don't break things too much. I am James Snell. I am an open source architect for nearForm. I am on the Node Technical Steering Committee. Been actively involved with the Node project for about 3 years. I was at IBM when I started my involvement with Node. I was the technical lead for everything IBM was doing with Node at that time. I was with IBM for about 16 years, lots of Java enterprise experience, a lot of open source, open standards stuff, which led me directly, which is what led me directly into Node. Kind of want to talk about, what Node is doing to support the enterprise. There's all these abilities that the enterprise cares about, right? Whether it's accessibility and securability, a whole range of things. I only want to talk about a few things: usability, reliability, predictability, securability, and maintainability. There's a whole long list of other things we can talk about here, but let's kind of level set a little bit. The colors are, the chart here may not show up too much. This is the Octaverse stats that GitHub produced about language statistics. And if we see here at the top, JavaScript, something like 2.3 million. The next one is 1 million after that. At the heart of Node's success is its usability, right? Yes, Node is great, but people don't use it because it's Node. They use it because it's JavaScript. And JavaScript is accessible. That's what the developer is using. That's the language they're using on the front end, back end. It's just, it is one of the most accessible languages there. Whatever opinion you may have of its warts, right, that's where your developers are. That's why Node has been so successful. The usability of the language translates directly into the usability of the platform. The fact that Node just gets out of your way and lets you write code very, very quickly. Right. As JavaScript has grown, as the popularity of the platform has grown, we are continuing to increase our efforts to bring the web platform, the browser platform, and Node closer together. When Node first came out, there was this idea, well, Node was one thing, browsers were something else, right? That idea has thankfully started to erode, right? It's one web platform, right? JavaScript on the server is really no different than JavaScript on the client side. And it doesn't matter what kind of client you have. So the Node ecosystem is massive. This chart here, don't worry about the text, so I'll explain it. Last week, when Node 10 was released, we hit just over 1 million downloads a day for Node, which is pretty significant. That's looking at just where we were just 2015, that's massive growth in the platform. So in order to maintain a platform that is that significant, we have to make sure it's actually reliable, that people can actually continue to rely on the platform, not breaking every time that there is a new release. And I want to put some numbers around this to give you some idea. Node has had about 22,000 commits in its lifetime from about 2,000 individual contributors. Which, compared to some platforms, this may not be much, but half of that has been just within the past 3 years. We've had just this year, just in the first 4 months of this year, over 1,500 pull requests that have been processed. And to put that in comparison, React in the same time has had about 300, and VS Code, I think, on their public repos had about 500. Right, so there's a massive amount of activity that's happening within core. All of this, there's about 118 individuals with commit access. All right. This is an army of volunteers. There's nearForm pays me to work on Node full time, right? I'm one of maybe a handful. I can probably count the number of people that work on Node full time with on a single hand. Almost everyone else are volunteers. They're working on it part time. There are students working on the weekends. It's a massive amount of activity that's being supported by a completely volunteer ecosystem. Right? There is no centralized project management. Everyone just kind of works on what they want to work on, what they think is important. We do have some strategic initiatives that I'll get into a little bit later, but there is no central coordination for what is going to be in the next release of Node. It's just a bunch of people doing a lot of work just to keep this platform running and keep it growing. This chart down at the bottom, it's the GitHub activity chart for the repo, going back from the very beginning. And this period from 2015, 16, 17, and 18 has shown since we launched the foundation, has been the largest prolonged period of growth within the project's history, right? Over half the activity in the project's history has happened just within the past 3 years. Okay. There are 137 repositories in the GitHub organization. Last week we had 5 support, for a period of like 5 days, we had 5 supported major release lines in LTS, which is crazy. Now we only have 4, right? 6, 8, 9, and 10. 9 will fall off at the end of June. Still a massive amount of work. Miles Borens is here. He has led the long-term support effort for the past couple of years. Has done a tremendous amount of work into keeping these LTS branches actually up and running. So definitely kudos to him. But how do we actually make sure this stuff keeps running, right? The secret has been our CI environment, and this really goes to our automation teams and our build working group on supporting this thing. Every code change, no matter how small, is run on up to about 45 different operating system and architecture combinations. It varies depending on the specific release, whether it's master or one of the LTS. There's some variance there. But on every single one of those platforms, every change is run, and we run about 2,200 plus individual test cases. So any code change that happens is, if I'm doing the math right, is anywhere between 60,000 to 100,000 individual tests being run on these different platforms for every code change. And we run this, 10, 15 times a day, right? So if you think of the rate of change, how many times are we actually going out there, running Node, making sure that it's still running on each of these platforms, okay? So it's a very significant. This alone, the CI infrastructure alone, is the reason we've been able to keep Node so stable. And we have instances where, oh no, it's been red for a week. We have to go fix this. We actually take this quite seriously. If there's anyone to thank for Node being stable, go out to the people that are in the build working group, in the automation working group, send them a note, tell them thank you. They're the ones that actually keep the wheels on and make sure that people like me that are writing code don't break everything. So we don't just run our own tests. This is something we started a couple of years ago. A tool called Canary in the Gold Mine. The reason it's gold mine and not coal mine is because it's Node. It's so valuable, right? So. But what we do is we proactively run the test suites of 100 of the most popular modules, or influential modules in the ecosystem, and we try to make sure we don't break them. We run this on our CI infrastructure, so we'll go through, do a npm install, go out to GitHub, grab their tests, run their tests, catalog what actually failed, and a lot of times we break stuff unintentionally. So before we actually go out with the release, before they experience the breakage, we will catch those things and we will make those changes ourselves. And sometimes that's changing things within Node, reverting a change here and there. Or sometimes it's proactively going out and opening pull requests in those projects and to make sure that they're able to keep up. Right? One of the ecosystem developers who works with nearForm is on Twitter and GitHub. He's Macintosh, Matthias Booth. He alone has published something like 750 plus modules on NPM. Basically, if you use Node, you're using his code at some point, no matter what you're touching on. One of the changes that we made within core fairly recently around buffer, the buffer constructor, affected nearly, I think, just under half of his modules, which by extension affects millions of developers. So we made that change in core because of changes that, because of a problem we introduced in core. I spent, I think, 3 days just going through at least 50 of his modules, opening those pull requests for him to actually get those things changed. We will do that every time we have a significant break. When we change something in core, someone from the core project is going to go out and help the ecosystem actually update their code. Okay. And that's because we have a responsibility, and we take this responsibility very, very seriously, that we will avoid unreasonably breaking your code. Sometimes we have to, for security fixes or just poor choices in APIs years ago, and we need to update those things now. Sometimes breakage does happen, but we have to we have to take this responsibility very, very seriously. And again, this is a voluntary army that is taking this responsibility on. Right? There's no project manager standing over us saying, you got to do this, you got to have these line items done. These are all volunteers making this happen. Aside from reliability, we have to make things predictable. Back when IOJS happened, and I'm just going to say this, IOJS was the best thing that ever happened to Node. It was an absolutely phenomenal thing. It was dramatic, but it was fantastic. But when IOJS happened, we went from a time where it took 2 years to go from 0.10 to 0.12, right? And then 3 months to go to IOJS version 3. There were minor and major updates happening on a weekly basis. And the power users were like, this is awesome, I love it. The businesses were like, what the hell are you doing to us, right? Because we cannot maintain, we cannot keep up with this pace. They'll make changes one week, new major comes out the next week, and suddenly V8's updated and everything's broken again, right? The rate of change was far too fast. So when we launched the foundation, one of the very first things that we did is we went to businesses and said, what rate of change makes the most sense for you? And when we compiled all the data, what we found was almost every single company was on this track of being able to take a new major version of Node once every 18 months, right? So that gives them about a year, 6 months of development time. They deploy the new platform. At the end of that, they start transitioning to the next version, right? It fit really well within their sprints. So aside from the normal semantic versioning stuff, we introduced. By the way, I don't follow slide order. I'm surprised I followed it this well so far. We introduced the 6-month major cycle. Major releases come out every 6 months. Even numbers come out in April. We just had 10 come out last week. Odd numbers come out in October. The even numbers after 6 months will transition to our long-term support plan, which is active maintenance of 18 months and then maintenance for 12 months. And the difference between that is active is proactive. We are, whenever we make a bug fix or add a new feature, we go out and proactively backport that. Maintenance is we only do it generally reactively, like if somebody comes and asks us. Okay? And what this cycle does is it allows us to have a period of overlap. So Node 10 just came out. I'm walking too far away from the podium. They told me I have to stay within a certain distance. Current is when we make things stable, right? We put it out there and make sure that there are no major regressions, right? We tell companies, okay, you can start doing some stuff with it, right? Start using it. But you really only want to put it in production once it reaches that blue phase, right? Once it goes into active LTS. And if you notice, with Node 8 and Node 10, there's about a 6-month overlap there, right? So if you're on one LTS, that gives you about 6 months to get your teams updated on that new version and then roll it out. And what you get during that time is assurance that the version you're moving from and the version you're moving to are still actively supported. So you'll get bug fixes, you'll get security updates, more importantly, that kind of thing. And what we found is that this fits really well in the adoption cycles for most businesses. This chart's a bit of a mess. This comes from the Node website, but it shows the comparison of the different versions and the impact that we've had on that LTS has had. Right at this point, where the 4x LTS went, the blue area right above that was the downloads for Node version 4. Really started taking off. As soon as 6 hit LTS, the red line takes over. That's the one that represents Node 6 LTS. And it starts falling off right when 8 went to LTS. And we're going to continue to see this pattern. This visually illustrates exactly the pattern that the companies were telling us, that they're on about an 18-month cycle. Okay? Let me go back here. Like I said, I don't follow slide order. All right, so Semver major, Semver minor, Semver patch. This has always been there within the project. We really started taking it seriously with IOJS, and we follow this very, very strictly now. Anything that is major and could be potentially breaking, we push out to that 6-month cycle. And we do take a very conservative view of this. It doesn't have to be guaranteed breaking. If it might possibly break you, then it's going to be December major, right? And we watch this very, very closely. Anything December major requires more review, more sign-off. Things that are minor in patch, those will come out on a more rolling schedule as needed throughout the cycle. Okay. The other thing we discovered we had to do, and this was direct feedback from users, is we had to get better at labeling things experimental or deprecated. The experimental things, we can roll those in. We have a number of those right now, like HTTP2, and there's some performance work and async hooks, and there's a number of things that are experimental in the platform now. Those are things we can make changes to anytime, outside of the normal December rules. So we can, like with HTTP2, in the middle of the 9x release line, there were major breaking changes that were made. But we're also warning people, don't rely on this in production unless you know that we can make major breaking changes to this. But we had to be very, very clear about what is experimental and what is not. Same thing with with deprecations. Deprecation happens, nobody likes it, but sometimes we have to tell people don't use these APIs anymore, right? And there's a couple of ways we can do that. We've gotten better at doing documentation-only deprecations. These are things where there's no change at runtime. We're just telling you don't use it. Okay? There are things, the runtime deprecations, these things are intentionally noisy, and if you've ever done an NPM install, you've seen these warnings come across. These are clear statements that this thing is broken. You do not want to depend on this, and we will be changing this in the future, so it no longer works. It's intentionally noisy, even though I know they are irritating. We are trying to get better at being more deliberate about when we add these in. And then there's the end of life. These are things that are going to be removed, and they have to go through the runtime deprecation cycle first. Reaching end of life is a December major change. This is stuff that we're going to pull out, and we may not replace it. We might replace it. I don't know. Okay, so we had to be very, very clear about these levels. All right, let me just get back ahead here. So aside from the predictability, there's the securability. And this is another critical one. So I'm on the triage team for security reports. If you send an email to security@nodejs.org, that goes, I think, to like 4 or 5 people right now. We treat this very, very carefully, even within the Node project, even within my employer. So I work for nearForm. I do not tell them about security vulnerabilities that are received until they are released to everybody, until it's disclosed to everybody. It is a standard part of our process that only as small a team as possible that has access to that vulnerability information until it is dealt with and released. And we've had to become very disciplined with this because of the responsibility to the ecosystem. We don't only handle vulnerability reports for Node Core. We have started taking on handling vulnerability reports for the entire ecosystem, for the modules themselves. And we act as our own CVE authority now for as part of the triage process for Node and for the ecosystem. So we have to get very disciplined about this on how we do this. So we use HackerOne now for the actual triage. Relatively new is we now have a bug bounty program, which is funded by the foundation, where folks can earn cash rewards for helping us fix security issues. So that is a fantastic new addition that we have. When it comes to this, we can always get better, and we want people that have experience in this area to come help and join us. We have a security working group that focuses specifically on these types of areas. So anyone that has experience, please come help us continue to evolve this process. Okay. Now, it's simply not. It's not enough for Node to be usable. It has to be maintainable. I mean, I've written code very, very quickly that was absolutely unmaintainable. I'm sure we've probably all have done this. We actually have to be able to debug it. observe what's going on. We had the talk about security and privacy. It'd be great if code was auditable, right? A lot of times JavaScript has not had a great reputation for really being understandable in terms of what's going on. How can you reason about callback hell, right? We have to get better at making Node understandable once the code is actually running. So several efforts are going on. This year, I would say that the number one priority that I have seen, like I said, there is no central project management. Everybody works on the things that are important to them. This year, we seem to have a convergence where a lot of people think maintainability and better tracing and those things are really important. So there is a renewed effort right now to make Node more maintainable. We see this through efforts in core. We see this through commercial products like NSolid. There are open source projects like Node Clinic. There are a variety of things that are out there that are all focused on making these things more, making the platform more observable in terms of what's happening. Improved tracing, error handling, postmortem debugging, better diagnostics, better performance profiling. There's been a fantastic bit of work, collaborative work between the VM implementers around the inspector protocol, with support with debugging in VS Code and Chrome Dev Tools and the Node inspector within core itself, of actually giving insight into what's happening into that running process. Active development efforts around V8 trace events. There's been more work. dtrace has been in there for a while, but there's, I know there's some folks that are working on improving that and extending that. eBPF, there's a number of separate projects within the Node Foundation, like Node Report. There's another one, Node Heap Dump, LL Node. These are all tools where a tremendous amount of effort is going into just making it possible to see what's happening within Node, right? And have those work consistently with the tools that also work in the browsers. Talk about some of the partnership efforts. There are also experimental efforts around new debugging models. Time travel debugging. Is anyone who's used the TTD in VS Code so far? It's amazing if you haven't tried this. It works with Node's Chakra core. Take a look at that. There's been some discussions about how we can take that capability and extend it to all the VMs, not just Node with Chakra core. So that is a tremendous piece of work from the Microsoft team. Have to give them a ton of credit for that. All of these efforts, again, just go towards making it so that we can actually understand and reason more clearly, more directly about what's happening within the code. Some of the other strategic initiatives that are happening. So I've talked about improved diagnostics, expanded standard support. HTTP 2, we now have, the WhatWG URL standard is now the default, and it's now global within Node. We just landed TLS 1.3 support with Node 10 and the update to OpenSSL that occurred there. There's going to be additional work happening. There's a conversation right now about whether or not we will land Brotli, which is a compression algorithm. It's still completely up in the air about whether we will or not, but those discussions are happening. Improved and evolved standard support is something it's always an ongoing conversation within core. Support for modern JavaScript language features, ES6 modules. I've been saying this for like 2 years. They're coming. Where's Miles? Miles is setting up a working group for actually getting this done. I'm going to put it all on him. I'm not sure where he went, but Miles, get modules done quickly. Promises support, actually having first-class support for promises in the API. We've started with an experimental FS promises API that's there. Kind of want to see how that goes before we expand anything else. But those things are coming. Multi-threading and multi-process support via workers. Anna Henningsen, Adalex on GitHub, has done a fantastic bit of work around this, actually getting workers to worker support in Node. It hasn't been landed in master yet. There's still a lot of things that need to be done there, but that is coming. So we will have the ability to run with the workers API. Improved error handling, messaging, improvements to data processing and throughput. Jeremiah over here has been doing a ton of work on this, improving the actual data throughput model. Anna's also been working on this as well. Collaboration with key dependencies, V8, NPM, Chakra Core. For the first time with Node 10, the experimental Node Chakra Core also had their version 10 come out on the exact same day at the exact same moment, which is, fantastic piece of coordination there. Getting Node to work on 2 different virtual machines has been quite an effort that's been going on for a number of years. An establishment of a mentorship program. This one is huge for me. We don't just have the responsibility to enable people to work better within Node, but work better within the ecosystem in the entire open source world, right? So the mentorship program will pair people who are brand new to open source, right? Brand new to this, and pair them with people like myself who are have been around for a while and stuff, and actually help them level up. So we are actively looking for more mentors. We have a bunch of people that signed up to be mentees, and in a much smaller set of actual mentors. So if you want to get involved with this, please reach out. It is a fantastic bit of work. It's not just focused on Node, but just contributing to open source in general. So those are our strategic initiatives. I went through that rather quickly. I don't know how much time we have left, but I wanted to leave time for questions. No time? None? Okay. So that's me. I'm J.A. Snell pretty much everywhere. Feel free to reach out, and thank you.